of the Geostrata, I would like to welcome you to this webinar, which is on the topic complexities of the Indian economy. I would like to begin the session firstly by introducing our esteemed guest, Richard Rekhy, who is presently a board member of KPMG Dubai. He's a former chief executive officer of KPMG in India, where he was a member of the global board and the council of KPMG International. Richard sir has over 39 years plus experience in consulting and professional services and has worked in Arthur Andersen, Ernst & Young and KPMG, where he has spearheaded the firm in various capacities. He's also a qualified chartered accountant in India and is a mentor and angel investor. Sir has also mentored a lot of startups and young professionals in consulting. So we are extremely honored to have you here with us and to share your knowledge on the Indian economy with us.
Sure. Thank you, Pranav. And good evening to everybody who is listening in and on this very interesting topic, where the world is and where India is today. As we all know and we would have read, that Indian economy is poised to become the third largest economy in the world by the end of this decade. In real terms, in PPP terms, we're already there, overtaking Germany and Japan to become the third largest. So we have got US, China, and then India. However, the complexity, what we talk about is that India will continue to be one of the poorest in the world in the terms of per capita income. So while our economy is large and we are big, we have a dichotomy. We've got we've got the fifth richest man in the world who's from India. And then we have the poorest of poor, maybe one of the lowest per capita incomes amongst the more major economies. This dichotomy actually makes the Indian economy one of the most complex economies to deal with. And it's not easy. So, when government brings some policy, I think we should look at it from that. But before I get into it, I think it's important just take us back a few centuries back to the past, as the British economist Angus Maddison. Before the Britishers came to India, the country used to be 25% of the world economy. India used to be 25% of the world economy. And when the Britishers left, we were reduced to just 4%. That was a decade, that was a time when Indian economy really got, in fact, our education system, the poor became poorer, everything was a big challenge. So when India got independence in 1947, I think we need to compliment the government of the day for helping raise the growth, income levels, literacy rates, building out those major institutions of science and technology, all the IIMs and the IITs that got built, which actually today are serving the world. If you see, most CEOs in the top IT companies are Indians. And this shows the talent that has come out of India who have come through this same education system. However, India, right through from 47 to it had its own slow growth rate. Then 1991, the economy opened up and we had huge reforms. From I wouldn't say 1991, 5 or 6 years later after that, I think the Indian economy has been growing at about 6 to 7%. It had a growth rate of it went up to 9, 10, 11%, but on an average 6 to 7% per year, India has been growing since the economy opened up. And India's complexity of the economy is also further driven by the diversifying its exports, because the kind of goods we export now is much more than what we did now. In fact, it is one of our big revenue earners today in today's time. So what has the government done? It has taken 3 important measures from an industrial point of view. It maintained a proper distribution of economic power between the private and the public sector. It encouraged the tempo of industrialization by spreading it not only in the centers of cities where it was, but to the smaller towns and the second tier, third tier cities. And also the entrepreneurship, which was in a small select community of business, it has now moved to a much larger variety of people. And this can be seen even in today's time as we look at the entire new genre of kind of industrialists who have come, or business leaders who have come. They've come from a very new generation, and the startup is actually created its own kind of thing. So now Indian economy is driven a lot by the technology and by the startups. But we should not forget one thing. The Indian economy has three distinct phases. One, we have the high income consumers, then we have the middle income consumers, and then we have the very poor. 10% of the richest Indians have 77.4% of the wealth in India, and the poorest 60% have 4.7%. So what is happening? The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And this is a big challenge, not only for India, it's for the globe. It's happening all around the world. And the poor are struggling to even earn a minimum wage. They don't have access to quality education, and they don't have access to quality healthcare. The COVID actually also showed how we were not able to deal with, especially in the second phase, and some of those pictures still linger in our own minds as we think about it. Secondly, the biggest challenge in Indian economy is this trickle-down effect. As you know, when you put money into the hands of people, that trickle-down effect is when the consumption grows. India has not been very effective in this for various reasons. And though in the last 12 to 15 years, a lot of poor people are taken out of the poverty line, but unfortunately due to COVID, a lot has gone back. So all the efforts in the last 15 years have actually gone back, and people have gone back into the poverty line. So these are the challenges we're having. Secondly, I'll just try to explain it through two examples. So India churns out a 5 rupee sachet for shampoos. Nowhere else in the world you have this sachet for shampoos to cater to the poor. So you have to cater to the poorest of the poor. And then you have the MRO, which is a maintenance and repair overall for aircrafts, for all these private jets, which are owned by a lot of business people. So India has some of the best MROs in this country. So I think that's another dichotomy in the economy, MRO on one side and a 5 rupee sachet on the other side. Just giving an example out here. However, the main challenge for the Indian economy today is consumption. Consumption has fallen since the demonetization. Demonetization actually broke the backbone of the middle and small income people. The middle class and the small and the unorganized sector, the rural sector was completely broken during the demonetization. They had struggled to recover, and then COVID came and further put the setback. So even while they were trying to recover, COVID said, so consumption is a challenge today. And as far as I know, as I've been tracking the Indian economy, India was always a consumption-led growth story, a great growth story, consumption-led. But however, that consumption is now falling. It's a challenge. Government will have to see how we can induce consumption and create demand for. So on one side, earlier we used to have supply side issues. Now we have actually demand side issues. So that's a challenge. The other one is we have seen inflation now. And you can see by the RBI intervention recently, inflation is now going up, and it's a worrying factor actually. And so also now the ability to get loans, the loans will be more expensive. Even people don't have access to these loans, some of the people who may want it. So that's another challenge. Capacity utilization, right from about 2017, I think, where our capacity utilization has been hovering between 60% and 70%. Few times we have gone up to that 70%, between 60 and 70%. And this is actually deterring people from putting more investments in. So while you see all these big money, going around and saying this acquisition, but I just want to highlight one thing to you. This money is going into brownfield projects, not greenfield. So no additional capacity is being created. Now you may have seen that cement wholesome is moving out, and there are 3 or 4 bidders, and one of them will get it. That is again going into existing capacity. There's no additional capacity of cement being created. If tomorrow one of these groups which are acquiring it would have put a new capacity, that would have helped in growing the GDP of the country. So the worrying part is no new investments are coming in, or no new substantial investments are coming in. That's a bit worrying. On the other hand, we are seeing some great amount of investments being made out of the country. You may have read about Mukesh Ambani, Reliance, looking to acquire Boots in UK. So there's a huge amount of acquisition money which is going out of the country to make. It's good. We are very proud that today we own a lot of global brands, and we are owning a lot of, it's a good thing actually. but it's all going outside the country. So that's another worrying part. The other point I want to cover is about tax reforms. I think India went through, I would say the government did a fantastic job in the last 2-3 years when they brought in corporate tax reforms, when they brought it down to as good as any other developed country. So our tax rates came down, and we were one of the most attractive destinations from a tax perspective if somebody wants to invest in the country. However, the benefit could not be materialized because by the time it all came in, COVID came and hit. So the real benefits of this corporate tax was not seen in the corporate as much as one would have seen it. Now, when we did corporate tax return, I think the next thing on the annual was, but which has not been done, was to actually bring about reforms in the personal income tax, which has not happened. So it's important that the government looks at personal tax reforms, which will help the middle class have more disposable income in their hand. And as we know, once you have more disposable income in your hand, you spend more. And when you spend more, GST collections go up. So in a way, government is collecting more taxes. And in my view, I've always held this view for a long time. Actually, a time has come to bring the agriculture sector and other non-income tax sectors under the net of income tax. It's important. And this could be introduced by ensuring adequate protection to be given to the small and marginalized farmer so that they are not being taxed. But I think the rich farmers and everybody who's above a certain threshold of income should be taxed. The other point I'm making is that people who have income from business, from salary or any other head of professional or whatever you may call it, and they still have agricultural income, for them, the total income should be taxed. There should be no exemption for agricultural income because that is creating a huge dichotomy in the economy where there is no fairness. So when we say only 3% of Indians pay tax, it is not a right calculation because the 3% is not, the total Indian population is not applicable to pay tax. There are so many young people who are not in the working force. There are all this agricultural sector exempt. So the actual people who pay tax is much more than 3% of the eligible people. But what I'm saying is take the denominator out and we should increase the denominator. We need to bring the agriculture sector out there and also the other exempt sectors in out there. So if we get this personal income tax reforms, I think this will go a long way in ensuring equality and in ensuring that the tax collections also are right. Secondly, in my view, the government needs to put more money into the hands of the SME and MSME sector. I can tell you in Europe, for example, in Germany and many other countries, people just got money during the COVID period. Checks came from the government. In the US, huge amount of checks have gone. In fact, I was reading a Fortune report which said that the US has increased its retail sales have gone higher than the pre-COVID levels. So money being pumped into the system and sending checks to people actually drew up consumption and helped the economy grow. So I think money needs to be put in the MSME sector, into the informal sector, and so that, and the trickle-down effect, in my view, of this will be very large because these people, this money which will not go to investments, will not go anywhere, it will go to consumption straight away because they are waiting for this money to come and they would, all the things that they wanted to buy, they will now buy. And this, you can see how the two-wheeler industry is in bad shape. This is showing where the rural sector is and how the recovery has not taken place there. So another irony of the Indian sector is, which is the complexity again, as we say. So while if you look at the general ingredients of the Indian economy, it looks like manufacturing should be big because the way we are and the way our population is, but yet the service industry actually dominates it. The total industry, it's about 26% of India's GDP, and manufacturing maybe only 18 or 19% in that. And however, the services sector contributes 54%. So while it's good, but big jobs cannot be created in the service sector. They have to be created in the manufacturing sector. So India needs to work on it. And India, being the third largest economy in PPP terms, purchasing power parity terms, I think we need to ensure that our manufacturing sector, that there is now, somewhere along the line, question comes up with China not being the favorite. can India take the place of China? Without a strong manufacturing sector, it will not. So India needs to, just to give you a small example, India sells about 3 million cars in a year, having 2.8 to 3 million cars. China sells about 25 million cars in a year. I mean, I'm just trying to give similar population, and you can see the spread in that economy. On the positive side, I think the construction sector is doing pretty well. And when I talk of construction sector, I'm specifically talking of the roads and highways. I think that ministry has done extremely well. We have got some massive road projects moving at a very high frenzy. I think I may be not wrong by saying that possibly India is producing the largest number of roads in the current time at about 12,000 kilometers a year, which has not happened any time before. And about 6 to 7 lakh crore investment is going into these roads. And as you can see in the monetization program that is happening today, I think the government is earning a huge amount of money through these road projects where these foreign investors are coming, Macquarie, etc., and they are buying these roads out, and a huge money is coming to the government. The other sector, obviously, with roads growing up, construction doing better, I think steel and cement are also growing very strongly, and this has been reflected in the increase in car prices when the steel prices went up and the cars went more expensive, or the cement sector also doing very well. And now, so it is very strange actually. Cement sector doing well, and then Holcim decides to exit India. So anyway, so these are the questions will continue to haunt a profit-making company. Why would you leave a country where that sector is doing very well at the moment? The other big project that the government has planned, which is going to very shortly get launched, is this national broadband, which we call the BharatNet, which is the fiber being put into for that. So that is also going to be about 3-4 lakh crore project. So it is a huge investment. And so that will also create a lot of jobs, etc. The one big advantage which continues, and I'm very positive on it, is the India's demographic profile is the biggest advantage it has over most countries. And I think, so on one side, you'll say, okay, demographic profile, is it a dividend or is it a disadvantage today, having a large population like this? I think one thing that has happened is while the jobs, and you've been seeing the reports everywhere, that job losses, jobs are going down. But I think a new economy has emerged, what we call the gig economy. And in my view, gig economy is becoming mainstream. And there is no way in which the government actually measures the job creation in this gig economy. I'm talking of the Uber drivers, those kind of people who are coming out there. So there is jobs actually being created, but there is no method today in which we can measure this. And so you see, when governments need to operate, they need to also keep themselves aligned with what's happening in the new world, and we need to put systems to measure this job creation so we can answer questions. And also, India aspires to be a $5 trillion economy. We have seen IMF predicting that by 2029, India should be a $5 trillion economy. But for that, the MSME sector has to fire. And I think, as we know, the biggest jobs don't get created in the big companies, by the way. So the big companies don't create the jobs. The jobs are created at this MSME, SME sector, because they are the ones who actually create, because they create the ancillary units, the production which goes into the main companies. And I think so there needs to be a focus on this sector. We need to help it in terms of R&D, in terms of financing, in terms of all the support system. Just to give you one example, I was sitting with one very major tire manufacturer in India, and he said these Chinese tires are actually killing our market, are affecting us. And I said, but they must be not of the same quality as you. He's saying, no, they're the same quality. I said, how is it cheaper, 20% cheaper? He's saying, because they have a cluster approach. I think so India has to get into a real cluster approach where all facilities and all manufacturing people are in one cluster. So the cost, logistics cost, the R&D, the HR, all the support systems can actually be provided by a common services. So the cost goes down, and then they can concentrate on their production. I think one of the big India's poised, not yet, poised to become the startup capital of the world. And I don't know whether you saw the recent article which came out where they've said by 2030, India is expected to take out 1,000 unicorns. Today we have 100. Okay, we have 100, we are at 22. In 8 years, they are saying from 100 to 1,000. And it may look very audacious, it may look very ambitious, but if you see almost every month, 2 or 3 unicorns are coming up. So, and I think that unicorn is going to India's startup ecosystem. But I think for that, I think a lot of things are required. We need funding. India lacks capital. We require funding at the right time. We require funding to come in immediately. And I think this paucity of local capital is a challenge. So what happens? All these foreign investors come, they come and invest in these startups. The money remains out of the country and it also gets sold out of the country. This money has to come into the country. And I think that's very, very important, that how we create investments within India in the startup community, where the smart young generation like y'all, who are going to not take jobs but are going to get into startups, how are you all going to get your funding and how are you going to reach somewhere out there? So like I said, some of these unicorns are domiciled outside India owing to the regulatory challenges, tax policies, and lack of local capital incentives. So I think that is what we need to bring. So similarly, deep tech is a big thing which is happening today in the world, and healthcare startups, which is again really big, because the way it is said is that if technology companies grew, it is going to be the biotechnology which is going to be the dominant and going to be trillions of dollars are going to go into it. And I'm not talking now of the metaverse which is coming to hit us. The metaverse is going to be multi-trillion-dollar opportunities which are there. India has an opportunity to play in that space. It's new. Everybody's got an equal opportunity, and I think we should not miss that big bus out there. So, but we need to have adequate, I was talking to a very big investor who spent a lot of time in India and China. I asked him, what's the difference between China and India when it comes to startup? He's saying the Chinese companies get a huge amount of funding early at the right time. So funding is not about just getting funding. It's about getting at the right time so that they are able to deal with the issues there and grow fast. And I had gone to China just before the COVID and visited some of those companies. And I can tell you the kind of funding and the money they get. It's amazing to see. And you see the growth story which comes after that. It's real. The way they have done it. So the question that comes before us, okay, all these challenges are there, some of these opportunities are there. Can India become a global economic powerhouse? When I talk of global economic powerhouse, not that we were a global economy, we were a global economic powerhouse many years back, many centuries back, I would say. So what does India need to do? I think first we need to have positive policies in place. We need to have the ease of doing business, which actually impacts. So on the ease of doing business, on the index, we came from 140 to whatever, 60 or whatever. But that is not, those are 10 parameters which are looked at. We have to make it ease of doing business for industrialists who set up their companies and ensure that it's there. So import substitution is a big item. I think import substitution, because we're talking of Make in India, I think that is going to be. And India needs, the global supply chain during COVID has been broken. Here's an opportunity for India to become part of the global supply chain. And that is going to drive domestic manufacturing in a big way. And I think that's something that we need to work on. We have challenges around high logistic cost. We need to see how do we get this logistics cost out. And we need to continuously build up physical infrastructure. The tough part of building the physical infrastructure, which will help in capital good production. Because once capital goods production comes, it'll provide employment, it will revive the private sector confidence, and it will also help attract further investments into this country. We have seen the story of Germany, which built a huge amount of roads during Hitler's time, actually, when Hitler saw this opportunity, build those roads. And what we know today as the Autobahns in Germany. This same model was copied by Kennedy in the US when John F. Kennedy became president, and he went out to build the roads, and somebody asked him, why are you spending so much money building roads? He's saying, I'm building roads because the roads are going to make money for me. We had UK do the same thing. And all these economies have benefited. And today, India will benefit huge through this road network. So I think we need to go ahead and continuously build our roads. Our big challenge is we have a huge coastline on all the sides of India, as you can see when you look at the map of India. But we have not used inland waterways. We have not connected the inland waterways, which is the cheapest form of transporting goods. So we have railways, we have roadways, we have airways, but we don't have the inland waterways which can connect from one side. So those blockages which are all over the country need to be deblocked so that goods can move through water to different parts of the country. I think those are very, very important, and that will be a huge amount of benefit to the country. When we look at the other one is this FTAs. We need to work on more beneficial FTAs for ourselves for both goods and services. While India has done well on IT and digital services, our exports in IT are big and they are growing, and you can see that sector growing. We need to get into non-digital services. And that means because of the large talent pool we have and the demographic advantage, India's other challenges around R&D, we only spend 0.6% of our GDP on R&D. If you take most good countries, they are doing between 2.2 and 4.9% of GDP is R&D. So I think we need to get, and because of not doing this R&D spend, we are followers. We don't lead the way. We don't go and innovate and say, I mean, this big thing that Elon Musk is doing on the space technology, you know what he's doing, just not putting people out in Mars and, you know, sending people out. He's going to connect the whole world on the telecom. He'll have all the data with him. Starlink is going to have all the data. It's such a big project that he's working on. And India has the space technology. So why don't we work on, you know, becoming much stronger, creating our entire system around space technology, food technology. I think use of robots and drones, which can be done much more in the country, which is there. We need to revive the rural sector through use of technology and startups. The rural sector has not had its share of technology or startups. I think we need to have it. Our gems and jewelry, which was our prime, we were the leaders in gems and jewelry. We need to revive it, and we need to come back as the market leaders in that. And I would add one more thing to the gems and jewelry, which has been a very untapped industry in my view, is our crafts industry. The crafts which we have, which have come from generations, we should not lose it because it has a huge value, and we need to see how we can take it to the world. And we also need to look at exporting military hardware, because when we talk of the Make in India program, military hardware will be a great export. And I think the manufacturing, like I said, if we get our manufacturing right, we would be able to take on the Chinese, what they are losing out. The world is against China. China's got an anti-feeling. Can India be that place? We've got a large pool of engineers, maybe one of the best pool of engineers. Our wages also are pretty decent. And we have a significant domestic consumption for our manufactured goods. So I think we need to look at that. Just to share with you, India recently signed an FTA with Australia. And in that, Australia is trying to replace China. They're finding a new partner. And can India become that new partner? Today, Australia-China trade is about 100 billion. India-Australia trade is about 11 billion. Can we actually bridge that gap and bring the Australia trade out here? Now, what is so interesting about Australia? Australia has something called the rare earth, which makes semiconductors and chips, okay, which had to close down because Chinese were cheaper. Chinese make about 90% of the world's rare earth. So all the chip industry, semiconductor industry is controlled by them. Can India actually get that rare earth? Work with Taiwan. So get a collaboration done between Taiwan, Australia, and India, and create a big semiconductor unit in India, because chips are going to be used everywhere, whether it's phones, cars, anything you want. So I think we need to get into that industry, and Australia has the rare earth, that mineral, and we should be able to get it. So I think what we need to do, I think we're sitting at the cusp of where we have all these advantages, and we have to see how does India have are we brave enough and wise enough to grasp this opportunity and accept the challenge of the future. With this, I close my talk. I'm very happy to take on any questions.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll start first by the question from Pratyaksh.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, first of all, we are very, very, very honored to have you with us. And sir, my question follows, like there is a lot of emphasis recently on FTAs on the India side. And so there is one criticism that is leveled against India not joining FTAs like RCEP or TPP, because it is said that our manufacturing industries are still not capable enough to compete on a global level. So, sir, how do you how do you see it? Because till the time we don't allow them to compete, they're not going to be much incentivized. But still, we also face some risk. So, like, what's the way to go ahead with this?
So, see, if we look at the advantages, if you look at the growth of all countries which grew, most of them grew along the coastline, the manufacturing. Okay. India has this huge coastline. And I think what we need to set up is capacity manufacturing facilities. We don't have large capacities. And because we don't have large capacities, we are not able to get economies of scale. So our cost per unit is very high. Secondly, our logistics cost is very high. This entire Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, Delhi-Calcutta industrial corridor, that is gone. It is not getting done. If it all gets done, our logistics costs can come down. And I said using inland waterways. So India is one of the highest logistics costs per country. If you know, our fuel cost is one of the highest. And you know, the one question I always keep asking myself, how did we let the Middle East become the hub for the planes, for the airlines? Why could India not have become that hub? But because we have all these costs associated with this, we are not able to put that hub. Why is, you know, Dubai, a small country, the hub for the whole world? Well, India could have been that hub because we are almost located similar kind of positioning if we take from that point of view. So I think we need to build capacity. We need to create incentives. We need to make ease of doing business, actually ease of doing business. And we need to get the regulators. We need to start trusting our people and not have so many regulations. Our regulatory framework kills people. And I think we need to make our regulations much easier so people would come and set up business here. Because as they grow, government collects. You know, I've always been a believer, the more you lower taxes, you just lower GST. The collections will go up twofold, threefold, fourfold, in my view. Because I remember when during the economic crisis in 2009, when they reduced the central excise duty from 14% to 10%, collections went to all-time high. So I think the more we reduce these, so we have to bring in tax reforms, we need to bring in ease of doing business, we need to build these capacities, we need to ensure that all the right business people are incentivized to actually get this done. I think India can be there. See, nothing's going to move to China tomorrow. It's going to take 8 to 10 years for all those manufacturing things to unwind and come. We have this opportunity to build this out in the meantime. And, you know, because you don't want these same companies going away to some other jurisdiction, to Vietnam or Thailand or somewhere else. Why not come to India? So I think we have to attract them here.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, welcome.
So the next question is from a live stream by Priyanshu Yadav. He's asking, can economists predict recessions beforehand? What are the early signs of a recession?
Economists have not been able to predict all the time. But yes, there are recessions. So fortunately, at the moment, we are going through inflation all over the world. So we're not going through the recession at the moment. And we're having the other problem the other way. But inflation does lead to recession at some point of time, because when people don't have money to spend, what do they do? And I think that is where the challenge is going to come. There are models which are there, which can predict by seeing certain economic indicators. The quality of information is definitely better today. So I think the ability to predict in today's time will be much better than what it was a few years back, I would say.
All right, sir. Next, we have a question from Harsh.
Greetings, sir. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
So my question is around this particular thing that right now we are seeing that the amount of free trade agreements that India is willing to sign has increased. And there's a change from the past policy where we kind of refrained from such agreements to a policy where we embrace such agreements. So what is driving such change of policy?
So you're talking of these FTA agreements?
Yes, sir.
So see, India signed a lot of FTA agreements many years back, as you know. But those FTA agreements, when you look at it, it was disadvantages to India because the other countries benefited. Exactly the points that Pratyush made earlier, where he said that India's manufacturing was not ready, and the things were a challenge. So I think that created fear that we don't want to sign FTAs. So India India went away, shied away for many years from signing FTAs. India has not been signing FTAs of late for many years. Now we are getting back to signing FTAs because we've got to be part of the global. You can't not be part of the globe, right? So if you've got to be part of the globe and you've got to be a major economic superpower, you've got to be part of that global supply chain. And there are going to be very different types of new alignments which are going to be created post-China. So India needs to find its own place. India is very attractive because it's a democracy. It's got a good legal system. It's got good governance, etc., compared to many other countries. So I think India will be an attractive destination, and I think we should sign FTAs which are beneficial to us. Because what we need, it's got to be, you see, the challenge we have everywhere in most FTAs, if you see, they're very good to do it with goods, but not for services. So we have got talent to export. We need to get visas. We need to get this thing that our people can actually go and work outside in different countries, because that is India's great contribution to the world. So once that gets sorted out and we are able to convince the other countries, yes, FTAs are just not about goods, but they are goods and services, I think India will sign many more FTAs. So you see many FTAs, even the UK, this guy Boris Johnson had come down. We're still struggling on the FTA, right? He's desperately wanting India, but he's not willing to give in on the visa front, right? So we need those kind of, free movement of goods, free movement of people. That point I'm trying to make. There needs to be free movement of both. So once we are able to get that, and I think someday it will come, because as this demographic dividend, which I spoke about, as it gets acuter in the European countries where their population is aging, Japan and other countries, they're getting very older. China has a huge problem because they have that one-child policy. So I think India will have a big advantage because India will be the only country which will be able to exploit the talent. Then people will want people from India. So we will see that happening, but I just hope it's not too late when it happens.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Next question is from Shantanu.
Greetings, sir.
Greetings.
So
Yeah.
what is your take on crony capitalism? Do you think it is dismantling the Indian economy, or is it likely going to be constructive in the coming days?
You see, crony capitalism depends the way you see it. So where you support a particular industrial group to help grow the economy, I don't see anything wrong in it, honestly. Because you're getting an agenda put out there to grow it. But when it is growing without any basis, or there is no fundamentals to it, I think that's when it becomes dangerous. Because you can't put up industries built all on loans with no revenues coming in. You've seen what's happened to the recent public issues of certain startups. You have seen it. Some companies are trading at 25% of their stock value when they were issued. I mean, you don't want those kind of things happening. So I think crony capitalism has its advantages, disadvantages. If it is, as long as it's done in the right way and it supports the agenda of the government in growing certain sectors which they want. See, I'll tell you what happens. The challenge we have in this country, there's a lot of distrust between the government and the business community. I think we need to first build that trust back. Secondly, our laws and regulations should actually be built to say that the businessman or the common citizen is honest. The first, you have to start with the premise that they are honest. And so what is happening for a few deviants, we are creating policies which are making the honest people not be able to operate in the country. So our laws and regulations are not there. So I would say crony capitalism is got advantages, disadvantages, like I told you. And in the long run, it's not good. But for giving the impetus and to grow for some time, it may be okay. As long as the fundamentals are right. If it is for the wrong reasons, then I would say it creates, you've got all these people running away from the country, right? Took huge loans and they suddenly disappeared. So who's paying it? You and I, all the taxpayers are actually paying those for those loans which are there, not paid.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So I have another question.
Yeah.
So like the lockdowns that were there, that were there because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they showcased a weakness in the global supply chain. So it led to like companies shifting to the policy of nearshoring and like getting all of their manufacturing centers as close to the places where demand is there. So I had a question that is this like a long-term change, and what impact does it have on India specifically?
Okay, so two things. I think it's a good question, Pranav. I think two things happened. One is the COVID showed the global supply chains were very fragile. And what now is in built an agi-fragile. You learn this new word. Anti-fragility is going to be built into the global supply chain because what has happened now is a reaction. The nearshoring is a reaction because you are scared now. See, two things came out. One, the global supply chain was broken. The second thing was food security. For countries which did not produce food like Singapore, Middle East, they are now saying, how do I get my food security right? Suppose another pandemic happens. I mean, how do I feed my people? I may have all the money in the world, but if things can't move, how do I feed the people? So, so I think what is happening. So, what is UAE done? I'll just give you a small example. I mean, I know we're talking India. They have now tied up with Israel, unimaginable. UAE and Israel tied up, and why they're tying up? Because Israel created desert into agriculture, and that's what UAE is looking to see whether they can create their own agriculture through using the technology from Israel to be able to produce their own food. So, in my view, this is all short term. No country can survive on its own. No country can survive on its own. You need everybody. The minerals are lying somewhere. The goods are being produced somewhere else. The consumption is taking place somewhere else. So I think that will continue. I think the biggest fear, in my view, is this new crypto which is coming in, and and India is not taking part in it at the moment, which is not good. Because you can't run away from it because you don't understand it. You need to sit down and understand it, and you need to be part of it because you don't want to be left behind, because crypto is not digital currency. So we are talking of digital currency being launched by RBI, but that's very different. That's a more distinct way of getting the rupee up. But I think the crypto is something we need to get going. So while you are talking of this nearshoring, it's all short term. It will pan out in the long run. It will go back, but there'll be new alignments. The same alignments are not going to be there. There'll be different countries aligning, and people will make sure that they get their security, they get their supply chains fixed. In fact, this is an advantage for India because where the supply chains got broken, India can now be part of that global supply chain. And so people will want to de-risk from just one country. They will go to many countries. In fact, Indians are the only talent which is willing to travel anywhere in the world. Even in the pandemic, they were willing to travel. The college students went back to America, Europe, while others didn't go. So I remember one day, just now, a few days back, the Australian, I'm part of supporting the center, this Commonwealth Bank of Australia. They're saying, will Indian students come back to Australia? I said, why not? I mean, why would they not come back to Australia to study? So I think the point is Indians are the most flexible and very hardworking and possibly the best talent in the world today. And I'm not saying it because we're just Indians, but that's a fact. Having worked in a global company, person to person, Indian talent is better.
All right, sir. So just one last question.
Yeah.
How has your experience in KPMG framed you both in your life and the way that you see the global economy?
So how's it? What you said? How's it?
How has it framed you in like your opinions in your personal life and like how you perceive the economy?
So I think KPMG, okay, any global consulting firm have their own values. We have our own higher purpose and our own values. I think having worked for a long time in KPMG and still continue to be involved as the board member for the Middle East and also supporting the Indian firm now, I think the challenge is the advantages one learned was how do you actually operate in a morally right way. It is not about being technically right. It's not about being legally right. But how are you going to be morally right? And it helped me while I was the CEO of the firm in India, take some of the decisions which actually were counterproductive to the firm in terms of revenue loss, etc. But I stuck by my guns of that higher purpose, the values which we as an organization stand for. It helped me become a better human being, I would say, better at collaboration. I think these organizations actually build you to become better professionals, and also to be confident and to be able to deal at the global stage and not shy away from anybody you meet on the global stage. So I did not feel at all intimidated by meeting any global chairman or anybody of that sort at any level. And so we went, that's why I said, on a person to person, I think Indians stand out. And I think KPMG and similar firms like KPMG actually develop the personality of the individual through the trainings, through the way we operate, and through the way we live our values. I think it's a very, for me, KPMG is a very value-driven firm, and it also comes from my own personal values, but it's a value-driven firm.
All right, so thank you so much for
and
this.
now all you students are here. I will just tell you one thing. You're still young, Pranav, you're still doing your first year, right? And I know you've got another 2 years, and I don't know when you'll start working or what you will do. But I'll only leave 1 or 2 things to y'all, because all the youngsters are here. Never sell anything that you will not buy. Never ever sell anything that you will not buy. Your destiny is in your hand. Whatever destiny is in your hand. And every time you go out, just put in that 10% extra. Every time you do something, 10% more, just 10% more, nothing more, one is saying. And you just imagine and remember, always quality is the most important thing that you must live for. And never ever take a shortcut. There's nothing more than a shortcut. A shortcut is a long cut. Never compromise. It's not worth it. I can tell you from personal experiences, and I've not seen anybody die because of hard work. You tell me if you've got some examples, please give it to me. So hard work and discipline are very important. You need to be disciplined. And youngsters, don't look for immediate gratification. I know all of you are saying, okay, I've done this, now where's my incentive? Look for the long term. I think the world needs the world needs your talent, needs your intellect. But I think we need to play the game as a marathon and not as a sprint. In a marathon is a long-term race, and I think that's what we need. We need to build institutions. All of us need. So when some of you will go to put up your own startups, ensure that you build institutions, build organizations that outlast you, and you're running the marathon race, which is not easy. So I would leave some of these kind of pointers with each of you as you go back into your lives and relook at the lives that you want to lead. And also one very important, there is no, I started my career while you put KPMG, EY and all that. I started my career in a small firm. My first 12 years was in a medium-sized firm. And let me tell you, all my learnings came from there. That did not stop me from becoming a CEO in a big four. So I'm just saying, work where the work quality is good. Don't bother about the brand. Work about the quality of work that you'll do will be very important when you're looking for your job. How you're going to do, and how the people you're going to work with, do they have values? Do they, you're all been brought up from your home, your teachers, they've taught you certain things. How do you actually live those out in real life and not do the wrong things? What some people are shortcuts. There's nothing known as a shortcut. So please don't do it. Anyway, thank you very much for having me here, and all the best to all of you all as you all go into your lives. Studies now, but also as you go on to get your jobs later on, few years from now.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for this highly informative session. It was really enriching, and I'm sure all of us learned so much, not just about like the Indian economy or the global economy, but like our futures and lives in general. And we're extremely grateful that you came here and graced us with your presence. And we really hope that we have more sessions with you in the future.
Sure. Okay, all the best, guys.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.